8. Jessie R Kazuski. One day in 2018, 37-year-old Jessie Kazuski dialed 911 from her home in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and reported that her friend was there unconscious. When police arrived, they found the woman dead in a recliner. There were crushed pills on her chest and several prescription bottles nearby. Kazuski allegedly told sheriff's deputies that her friend may have taken her own life and that she was an addict who was sick of being sick. She also claimed to be the woman's sole care provider and power of attorney. Police initially believed her, after all they had no reason not to. But things took a dramatic turn when the woman's autopsy results revealed a fatal amount of an eye-drop ingredient called tetrahydrozoline in her blood. The amount was too much for her to have ingested through just her eyes, leading detectives to believe that Kazuski had poisoned her to death. The fact that she changed her account of events numerous times only added to their suspicions. Investigators charged Kazuski with murder and also accused her of fraudulently using the victim's accounts to gamble away more than $290,000. She pleaded not guilty and was held on $1 million bail. The suspect's lawyer asked for reduced bail, which the judge denied. The victim's name is being withheld, despite Kazuski's repeated attempts to disclose the information in letters to the court. It's unclear where the case currently stands. 7. Griselda Blanco. Griselda Blanco was named the Black Widow for a reason. As a high-ranking member of the Colombian Medellin drug cartel, she was much more powerful than most women and many men. She was active in the Miami-based faction of the cocaine syndicate from the 1980s to the early 2000s, during which time her family enjoyed a lavish lifestyle. But the trappings of their upscale existence came to an immense cost to others and eventually to the family themselves. Blanco had a fierce reputation for being quick and willing to use violence toward anyone who displeased her. She didn't shy away from hurting or killing people to assert her dominance or get her way. Consequently, numerous hits were put out on Griselda. In 1984, she fled to California to escape the heat from her enemies, who were eager to assassinate her. But Blanco maintained her power through her associates and continued to have her rivals in Miami slaughtered. Oftentimes, she would command her subordinates to kill an entire household, and many innocent people lost their lives as a result, including children. The DEA finally caught up with the Black Widow in 1985 and charged her with conspiring to manufacture, import, and distribute cocaine. 3 years later, she was charged with murder in the state of Florida. Blanco received a 20-year sentence, but only served part of her time before being released and deported back to Colombia in 2004. In 2012, someone entered a butcher shop where she was buying meat and shot her in the head execution style. She was 69 years old. 6. Amber Hillbilling. Amber Hillbilling's husband Josh was pronounced dead in 2011 after he fell from the window of the couple's 25th floor apartment in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He was just 23 years old, and Amber was several months pregnant at the time. The 25-year-old widow claimed that she had pushed Josh after he grabbed her during an argument. She said that she never meant for him to fall through the window, but law enforcement believed her intentions were more sinister. Police charged Amber with second-degree murder. During the trial, Josh's father claimed that his son said Amber was using drugs while pregnant, and that Josh planned to divorce her and pursue full custody of their child once he or she was born. Amber maintained her innocence throughout the trial and stuck to her story after a jury convicted her in 2013 and sentenced her to 25 years behind bars. She even went on national TV to tell her side of the story, which included shocking claims that her husband had been violent toward her throughout their 10-month marriage. Unfortunately, nobody will ever know for sure what happened that day, especially since the only two people who were there are now dead. Amber took her own life in her prison cell in 2016. Her mother continued to speak up for her innocence even after her death, stating on social media that she'll never stop fighting for the truth. Shortly after her death, Amber's family members openly doubted that she committed suicide. They believed it was something that she would never do, especially since a letter she'd written to the local news agreeing to an interview arrived at the station just days after her death, suggesting to her loved ones that she had no intentions of dying. 5. Alice Jenkins and Mary Rolls. In one of the most notorious child abuse cases to ever occur in the state of Ohio, 5 kids endured years of being routinely locked in closets and forced to eat cat food and other disgusting things, including human and animal feces. They were underfed and languished in dark, cramped spaces for weeks at a time with urine-soaked blankets. These are just some of the numerous extreme acts of abuse the children suffered at the hands of their mother's romantic partner, Alice Jenkins. These horrifying days came to an end in 2003 after 3 of the kids escaped and alerted police to their living conditions. At the time, they were between the ages of 6 and 14. All 5 were removed from the home and separated into different foster and adoptive homes. In the meantime, Jenkins and the children's mother, Mary Rolls, were convicted on a laundry list of charges, including kidnapping, felony assault, child endangerment, and more. While Mary didn't directly commit the abuse, she was held accountable for allowing it to go on. Both women received a 30-year prison sentence. In 2019, Jenkins asked for an early release, claiming that she had been rehabilitated and was essentially a new person who had somehow redeemed herself for her unspeakable acts. Thankfully, a judge denied the request and she remains behind bars, where most people would agree she belongs. 4. Teresa Knorr. Teresa Sanders was just 16 years old when she dropped out of high school, married her first husband, Clifford, and became pregnant in 1962. Less than 2 years later, the couple got into an argument and Clifford told Teresa that he was planning to leave her. So she shot him in the back with a rifle, killing him. A jury acquitted Teresa of murder after hearing her sob story about how Clifford was a violent alcoholic and an abuser. She claimed that she had shot him in self-defense, even though his back was turned to her at the time. Her own sister testified against her, describing Teresa as a jealous and malicious woman who would kill Clifford before any other woman could have him. And still, the widow's story managed to garner the sympathy of jurors. Teresa had another baby in 1965 and went on to have 6 kids total. During those years, she became an alcoholic who often left her kids in the care of her romantic partners for days at a time while she went out drinking. She ended up marrying and divorcing 4 times, but her abuse toward her children remained well hidden until after her final divorce in 1976. At that point, Teresa became a recluse who cruelly isolated her children in a small, filthy apartment that reportedly stunk of urine. Neighbors would later say that the kids never had visitors and weren't even allowed outside. Teresa seemed to particularly hate her daughter, Susan, whom she kept chained to the family's dining room table. She forced her other children to participate in the abuse. One day, she gave a gun to her son and told him to point it at Susan. At some point, the firearm accidentally discharged and struck the girl. She initially survived but began suffering from sepsis due to the wound. Instead of getting medical care for the girl, Teresa dumped Susan on a roadside and burned her alive. After Susan died, Teresa began targeting another daughter named Sheila, whom she forced into prostitution as a way to support the family. She eventually stopped letting Sheila out of the house and deprived her of food and water until she died of starvation and dehydration. By the time Teresa was charged for her 2 daughters' murders in 1993, her surviving children were all adults, and it took several attempts to report her to law enforcement before anyone was willing to investigate their claims. She made a plea deal in order to avoid the death penalty and was sentenced to life in prison. Teresa is currently incarcerated in California and was denied parole in 2019. Her next parole hearing is in 2024. 3. Shirley Allen. Shirley Allen was in her late 20s when she married her first husband, Joe Sinclair, in 1968. He nearly died 8 months later and went to the police claiming that Shirley had tried to kill him with rat poison. No charges were filed, but Sinclair was smart enough to divorce his wife. 9 years later, in 1977, Shirley married for the 5th time to John Gregg. Less than a year later, he collapsed and died. It was initially ruled a natural death. Much to Shirley's dismay, when she went to collect on the life insurance, she learned that John had recently named his brother as the beneficiary. In 1981, she married yet again, this time to a man named Lloyd Allen. Soon enough, his health began to go downhill. Lloyd noticed that his drinks tasted off, but was apparently satisfied with Shirley's explanation that she was adding iron supplements to them. Unfortunately for him, the additive wasn't meant for his health. It was ethylene glycol, commonly known as antifreeze, and it killed him in late 1982, leaving Shirley as the sole recipient of a $25,000 life insurance payout. But rumors swirled in the couple's small Missouri town, where many people suspected that Lloyd's death was anything but natural. His body was exhumed, and an autopsy found that he died with a tremendous amount of poison in his system, too much for the antifreeze to have ended up in his body by accident, or from one single instance of having his drink spiked. A jury convicted Shirley of first-degree murder, and she received a life sentence. She died in prison in 1998 at the age of 56 or 57. While she was never charged with killing any of her other husbands, suspicions linger that she murdered at least one of them. 2. Betty Lou Beets. At just 15 years old, Betty Lou Beets married her first of 5 husbands. In 1970, she shot her second husband, Billy York Lane, twice in the back. She admitted that he threatened her, and she was acquitted of charges related to the incident. Beets tried to run her third husband over with her car in 1978. He survived, but no criminal charges were brought. In 1983, Beets reported her 5th husband, Jimmy Don Beets, missing. Days later, his fishing boat was found washed ashore on a Texas lake. Police spent 3 weeks dragging the lake, but failed to find Jimmy Don's body. Acting on tips, they executed a search warrant of Betty Lou's property and found the man's remains. He had been shot twice. They also found the remains of her 4th husband buried in the garage. He had also been shot. At her trial, Betty Lou's son testified that he helped her hide Jimmy Don's body. Betty Lou was convicted of Jimmy Don's murder in 1985 and was sentenced to death by lethal injection. She was executed in 2000 at the age of 62 after exhausting her appeals. She made no final statement and did not request a final meal. Her remains were cremated and spread over her mother's grave. Betty Lou was never convicted of her 4th husband's murder, but her daughter, Shirley Fugala, told the ID channel show Evil Lives Here that she had been forced to help her mother bury the man's body. 1. Alyssa Dayvault. One day in late 2018, a woman went to an emergency room in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, with heavy bleeding issues. She delivered a placenta and an umbilical cord, but no baby. Suspicious doctors contacted police about the patient, Alyssa Dayvault, who admitted that she had given birth at home and that she didn't try to get medical help for the baby, who had trouble breathing and didn't survive. Further investigation revealed that this wasn't the first time something like this had happened. In 2017, Dayvault had disposed of another infant after giving birth at home. The baby's father, Chris Machen, told the ID channel show Evil Lives Here that he didn't want to believe it at first. But in hindsight, all the signs were there, including periods of unexplained weight gain and strange moods accompanied by Dayvault's refusal to let her boyfriend touch her or get too close to her. Machen and Dayvault met at a store where they worked together. Shortly after he started the job and before they started dating, he came to work one day and learned from his co-workers that Dayvault had been found bleeding heavily in the bathroom and had gone to the hospital. Looking back, it made him wonder if she had done the unspeakable to more than 2 babies, but she was only convicted of the 2017 and 2018 incidents. Dayvault was convicted of murder and is concurrently serving the 2 40-year prison sentences. She's expected to be released in 2055, which means she likely won't see freedom again until she's a senior citizen. Her attorney asked the judge to reconsider the sentence, claiming that his client committed her horrifying crimes due to mental health issues, but the judge upheld Dayvault's sentence. Earlier this year, the 33-year-old was disciplined for getting caught with drugs in prison. Thanks for watching. Would you rather find out that your seemingly sweet next-door neighbor is a paroled murderer, or have a next-door neighbor who's suspiciously private for reasons that you can't figure out? Let us know in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.